August 4th marks 1 year since an explosion devastated Lebanon's capital. The Beirut blast resulted in the death of more than 200 people, injured about 6,500, and caused immense infrastructure damage. This all happened during an unprecedented economic meltdown that brought worsening hyperinflation, food and fuel shortages, and rising unemployment. Despite calls for significant reforms, Lebanon is still seeking a new government, and the official investigation into the explosion is far from concluded, with justice yet to be served. As we approach tomorrow's anniversary, let's take a look back at some significant areas impacted by the tragedy, as well as what progress has been made. Even before the blast, Lebanon was hit by a banking crisis in October 2019, rooted in decades of corruption and mismanagement. Following the crisis, the Lebanese pound plummeted. Banks clamped down on personal withdrawals and transfers. The crisis hurt the government's ability to provide fuel, electricity, and basic services. Weeks after the tragedy, Lebanese officials announced the central bank could subsidize fuel, wheat, and medicine for only 3 months. Due to a lack of hard currency funds, the government's subsidized programs either came to a full halt or were significantly decreased. Both resulted in a rise in prices on basic commodities, leading to higher poverty levels. The country has since imposed longer power cuts. This summer, Lebanon's caretaker government increased gas prices, sparking extreme fuel shortages. It has been a challenge to secure even the smallest bit of fuel, and hospitals say that generators are at risk of running out of fuel entirely, putting critical patients at risk. Nearly 220,000 people were affected by the blast, as thousands of buildings, including hospitals, clinics, healthcare facilities, and schools were damaged. That left many Lebanese scrambling to find new homes overnight and pleading for international help. Just 2 days after the explosion, French President Emmanuel Macron visited Beirut. It was meant as a symbol of solidarity. The French leader called for profound changes and presented reforms. France followed up on that promise by organizing an international donor conference on August 4th. Lebanon's military chief also appealed to international donors to support the army, warning that its collapse would lead to further chaos and insecurity. The international community says that billions of dollars in financial support and investment is contingent on the formation of a new cabinet that would enact reforms to fight corruption and kickstart the economy. In October 2020, Saad Hariri tapped his prime minister-designate and tasked to form a new government, but the political deadlock between Hariri and the president led to his resignation last month. Hariri was replaced by Najib Mikati, a billionaire endorsed by more than half of Lebanon's parliamentarians. Mikati previously served twice as Lebanon's prime minister. This time around, he said he plans to implement the French plan to save the country. The plan includes a government of specialists, but he must implement this plan while navigating Lebanon's sectarian, power-sharing structure. By December 2020, Judge Fadi Sawan charged 4 former Lebanese officials, including caretaker Prime Minister Hassan Diab, with criminal negligence. All refused to appear before the judge. The investigation was then suspended by the judge for nearly 2 months. By February, that judge was dismissed and a new judge was assigned to the case in July. Tariq Battar submitted a request to Parliament earlier this month to lift immunity for 3 MPs as well as several other high-ranking officials. But Battar's request to question officials has been resisted by MPs and the Minister of Interior. Discussions are still being held over calls to lift immunity on all officials. As we approach the 1-year anniversary of the blast, the date has been declared a national day of mourning. Marches in Lebanon and elsewhere around the world will be held to commemorate victims of the blast. To coincide with this anniversary, the United Nations is launching a report that outlines evidence of conduct that allowed the dangerous material to be stored at the port in the first place. Meanwhile, the tragedy has come to reflect the ongoing political, social, and economic crisis that has gripped Lebanon for years.